Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the XFL DFS Week 3 live stream. So if you're watching live, do thank you guys for tuning in today. If you're watching on replay, also appreciate you checking it out as well. Pretty much what I'll be doing in this video is just kind of going through my sheet overall. This is kind of up on my Patreon page as well. Just going through kind of the guys in general for this week who I play, whether I play them in cash, GPP, their GPP paydown option, cash filler, stuff like that. But just kind of a little overview for this week in general. We do have the one game tomorrow, and then we have 3 games on Sunday. So should be a pretty interesting slate. And then once we get to the end, probably going to build like a cash lineup, probably going to build maybe like a different lineup there as well. Looks like there's a lot of quarterbacks in play this week. There's a couple of running backs that look pretty good, at least to start off. And then there's obviously going to be a plethora of wide receivers once again. But before we get into it too much, I'm going to give a shout out to runthesims.com. So at Run the Sims, you can use their classic optimizer or you can use their DYI optimizer as well. Just kidding. With the DYI, you can put in, your own target shares, touchdown equity rates, carry rates, everything else like that. So for someone like me, it's very useful. And if you use promo code coach at runthesims.com, you'll save 10%. Helps them out a little bit, helps me out a little bit, helps you out in building some lineups as well. Whether you want to use their projections, go into the DYI, do it yourself, kind of plug in the numbers that you want to do. Obviously, on my Patreon page, I do have the target shares up and the snap rates from previous weeks as well. So you can definitely look at some of that and then kind of gauge from there as well. But that's something that I do, and I'm really still working on for this week too. I got everything in, but I'm still building out lineups as we speak too. So very useful tool over there. If you're using the DYI, make sure you save your stuff, download the CSV, and then you can take it over to the regular optimizer, upload your projections from there, and then kind of do it as well. We could probably break that down at some other point in time too, if anybody is super interested at this in that point in time. But without further ado, I'm going to start off with the Renegades since they're the first on my sheet. So at quarterback, we do know that Kyle Slaughter was named the starter this week. He is $6,000. I expect him to be ultra chalky. When you talk about Kyle Slaughter, you also have to talk about the bad with the good. The great news is he plays Orlando, so it's a very good matchup. I'm probably going to be underweight to the field if I'm being completely honest. I'll have enough, so if he does have that big game, he'll be still out there and there's still lineups to have a chance. But when he has this big name that everybody knows, when he's $6,000, he's just going to be a super chalky guy, and he doesn't offer too much in the rushing department. He is kind of a turnover-prone quarterback as well, as we saw, I believe, is 11 picks out of him in the USFL. There was some good weeks in there, but there was a lot of mediocre weeks as well. So then from there, moving down to the running back position, we have news with this week that Keith Ford was released from the team, so he's no longer. So the only 2 running backs they have on this roster is Adrian Killens and Davion Smith. Davion Smith should be that lead workload this week. I have him projected for, about 68% of the carries. Adrian Killens, getting a little bit from the rest of it as well, kind of a change of pace back. If you really want to roll Killens out there, you could do it as a GPP paydown option, but at this point in time, Davion Smith, $6,500, looks a lot like a cash option and one of the safer running backs on this week overall. Moving down to the wide receivers, obviously last week they brought in Caleb Van Den Esch as another wide receiver, but for the wide receiver position, I'm mainly looking at Tyler Vaughns at $3,000 GPP paydown option there. You could probably play him in cash as a filler if you want to do so as well. We'll see what type of chemistry he has with Kyle Slaughter getting the start this week. And then Lawan Winningham is a GPP play. He was drawing the lead snaps on the opposite of Tyler Vaughns last week. He kind of supplemented or surpassed Jordan Smallwood last week. Smallwood, there's no chance in hell that I'm playing him this week at $6,900. And lastly, we get down to Sean Cannella. From the offensive weapon perspective, he's $7,100. He has built-in chemistry with Kyle Slaughter from the USFL days with the Breakers. So he is a guy that you can use in cash. You can use him in GPPs. You can pretty much throw him wherever you want. But he will be drawing a lot of ownership, and there will be a lot of Kyle Slaughter and Sal Cannella stacks this week. So maybe if you want to get a little bit different, maybe you play some Sal Cannella, you play a different quarterback and just get it off there and build a mini stack in a different game. And then last but not least, we have the Renegades defense going against Orlando. It's going to be a pretty good matchup for them overall, $4,800. Second most expensive defense, but they are definitely a cash game option this week. Moving down to the defenders, who are probably like one of the least inspiring teams just moving forward. Jordan Tiamu is $9,400. Like, if you really want to throw him in a GPP, you could, but I'm just not there at this point in time. We really haven't seen any depth charts this week, so haven't seen too much from there. We've had some injury reports and everything else like that, but uh, there's still like a chance that Derek King actually could be announced like the starter. If that happens, I think he's definitely a cash game play. But right now, he's kind of a GPP, maybe a little bit of a dart throw at this point in time, but still has some pretty good upside at that. Then at running back, Abram Smith looked better last week. A lot of his rushing yards came alongside Derek King when he was in the backfield. So if you want to play him in GPPs at $8,200, you could definitely do that. If you're looking for a deep GPP paydown option that's a little bit different than what other people are going to play, you could look at Raquel Armstead. If everybody's getting to this Morgan Ellison chalk, which we'll talk about a little bit later, Armstead in the same price range, probably not going to get as much opportunities, but at least he's in a run-heavy offense where there could be a decent amount of opportunities, and he had 15 carries last week. Artavius Pierce, Puka Williams, both were inactive last week. We're not going to talk about them too much. Moving down to the wide receivers, Chris Blair has kind of been the main guy out there on the field. He's a GPP paydown option at $3,000. Azard, we're not really interested in. Josh Hammond's overpriced. If you really want to throw him out in a GPP, I guess you could. Lucky Jackson at $4,100. If you really want to throw him in GPP, you could, but a little bit banged up this week too as well. Josh Malone, same thing. Burley Moore, one of their backup tight end, I should say, is out for week 3, so that is some news. Ethan Wolf's $2,700. Like, if you really wanted to take a dart throw there, you could, but there's just not enough passing volume in this offense overall. Then for the defenders defense, you could roll them out in GPP. I forgot to write down the matchup for them. I believe, let me just look at that real quick. I think I have them written down for every other team. It's just this week that for DC that I don't have written down at this point. But I could be wrong at the same time. So DC is going against St. Louis. St. Louis does have, a little bit banged up offensive line. We'll see if Brian Hill plays or not. Obviously, AJ McCarron is one of the safer quarterbacks, so there's probably not going to be a lot of interception opportunities, but there could be some sack opportunities, maybe fumble recovery. And, it's still Greg Williams' defense, so they're going to be pretty aggressive overall. Then we move down to Houston. So Cole McDonald, $6,200. You could use him as a dart throw if you really want to, if you were like 150 maxing or something like that, but not personally rolling to him myself this week. Brandon Silvers, $9,500. You could use him in cash. You could use him in GPPs. Just kind of depends on where you're at. Probably more of a GPP play this week than a cash game play, since we do have some other potential cash game options, like a Kyle Slaughter, a Brett Hundley, who we assume starting at this point in time, and everything else like that. Getting down to the running backs, really just looking at Max Borghi, he's a GPP at 9,000, and then Nick Holley, who's really a wide receiver, as a GPP paydown option. So if you were looking for a cheap running back, you could definitely go there with him. In terms of the wide receiver group here, Deontay Burnett is $9,100. Didn't really get there in week 2, so his ownership is probably going to be suppressed at this point in time, but still explosive offense. He could definitely get there once again like he did in week 1. So you can roll him out in some GPPs, stack them with silvers, and kind of go from there. Then Javante Kirkland, $7,700. Pretty steady target share both weeks so far. Pretty good upside there. So he's a potential cash game play this week. I am taking injury status off of Travell Harris. So kind of after those 3, if you include Nick Holley in there too, we get into the group where Travell Harris played a lot of snaps week 1, but technically he's still listed as second on the depth chart, although the depth chart does say subject to change. So you could roll him out in GPPs if you want to, take some shots there, especially if you're 150 max, and I think you want a lot of exposure to these wide receivers. Cedric Bird in his place got a touchdown last week and 3 receptions, but later in the game, they really went to Ben Putnam, so both those guys could be considered GPP paydown options if you want to go there. Especially if you get news like Travell Harris is inactive again for whatever reason, although it seems he's been just practicing all week anyways. Can't really talk right now for whatever reason. Houston Roughnecks defense, GPP for me personally. They are going against San Antonio. It could be a cash game play too, because San Antonio's offense line is pretty banged up. They weren't that great to start off either. So there is a lot of opportunities there, especially for sacks. So if you wanted to roll them out in cash, you could definitely do that as well. But Arlington's probably going to be the more popular one for cash. Moving down to Orlando. We are now down to two Orlando quarterbacks with Paxton Lynch and DeAndre Francois. Quentin Dormandy was cut from the team, essentially dismissed from the team, however you want to say it. Supposedly, he was sharing plays with other quarterbacks with other teams. Probably a big no-no, but when you're in Arlington and everybody's practicing there, things get moved around and kind of spoken out that probably shouldn't be at times too. So it is something to note there, and wouldn't be surprised if something else like this happens in the future, but he is no longer with the team. Probably Paxton Lynch to start. We might see some DeAndre Francois behind him. Those guys would just be pure dart throws at this point in time since we don't know how this is all going to shake out. In terms of Jermaine Martin, he would only be a GPP option. He's $7,800. Not really worth it at this point in time since him and Taylor are pretty much splitting carries. If you want to roll out Kelvin Taylor at the flat minimum with 3,000 pay down option, definitely could look at that. Then kind of the big news this week was they made some changes to their wide receiver room once again. So they claimed Dan Williams on waivers from San Antonio. He's $3,000, but I do expect him to be inactive this week since he just recently joined the team. However, Lance Lenore joined the team like 2 days before their last game, and he played half the snaps. So there is that to keep in mind as well, but don't think Dan Williams will be playing this week. And then they ended up cutting Dantes Bird and Stephen Goodry. So that was two of their first 6 picks they cut. And they went wide receiver heavy in the draft. So there's no Stephen Goodry and there's no Dantes Bird on this team. Andrew Jamel's $5,700 is lower price in my personal opinion. Cody Lattimore's $4,100. Definitely could use him as a cash game play this week. Probably the safest wide receiver in terms of Orlando this week. Pretty much everything else after that is just kind of GPP options. Eli Rogers probably would be the highest one for me. GPP paydown. Played a lot of snaps in week 2, but only saw the one target, but he did get a touchdown on that. Javonte Payton, who did play a couple more snaps in week 2, he obviously was inactive week 1. $3,000 GPP option if you want to go there, kind of a dart throw. Hope he gets loose on a deep bomb. And then who else was there? I'm trying to think. I think that's it pretty much for their wide receivers. Tight ends, they got Ryan Becker and Logan Carter. Logan Carter's been the one that's been involved in the passing game. They did sign Jalen Smith this week too. We'll see if he's active or not. I assume that he's probably inactive since they just signed him this week. Their defense, I do consider a GPP option as well. They are playing against Arlington. Their play calling hasn't been too great so far this year. Kyle Slaughter has been known to get some turnovers. So wouldn't be shocked if they had a decent week, and they are the cheapest defense overall. Moving down to San Antonio, we have Jack Cohn. If you really want to play Jack Cohn out there at $8,600, you can do it. Probably not get into too much of him myself personally. I'll probably be 20 max in this week. I might get to maybe like 1 or 2 shares, but definitely a guy to consider, but definitely not my favorite guy. This could be, a back and forth game. It could be a high scoring game, and they could be trailing in this game. So he might have to throw a little bit more. At running back, Kalen Balazs and Jaquez Patrick, both GPP options. Not super, super interested in either one at this point in time, but if I'm 20 max and I'm getting a little bit of Balazs, I'm probably getting 1 or 2 shares of Patrick as well. Then their wide receiver room is where it gets interesting. So obviously they waived Dan Williams, which was kind of a surprise since we did get news that Jalen Tolliver is dealing with a groin injury. He was limited on Wednesday and he did not practice on Thursday. So there's a chance that he doesn't play in this game. And he's kind of been one of my favorite wide receivers in the XFL, kind of in GPP formats as well. So we'll see if he plays or not. If he plays, he's a GPP option, but a little bit concerned with that groin injury. But when you look past him, all these other wide receivers are dirt cheap. So if you want to take a pay down option on any one of them, you could definitely do that. Darius Roberson Jr. in the slot, $3,000 flat minimum. He's a GPP option or GPP pay down option. He's probably a cash game option as well this week. TJ Vasher is a GPP pay down option. He saw a ton of snaps on the outside, 3 targets there. And then if you want to go to either tight end and Alize Mack or Deion Yelder, you could definitely do that as well. And then, like Fred Ryan and Travis Johnson would just be pure dart throws since we don't really know who's going to start on the outside if it's not Jalen Tolliver. Assume that it's Johnson, but it could also end up being Brown as well. Moving down to Seattle, we have Brahma's defense. I'm not super interested in playing this week against Houston. If you want to do it, you could do it in GPP. For this Seattle Sea Dragons, Ben DiNucci, $10,500, getting way up there in price tag, but he is a cash game option still with the volume on offense and the fact that there is no Brendan Knox in this game. So that's something to watch out for as well. Morgan Ellison, really the only running back they have at $4,600. TJ Hammonds is around. He's flat minimum 3K, but he's been playing mainly wide receiver, and that's where he's listed at the depth chart. So wouldn't be shocked if Hammonds gets some carries and looked okay, but mainly going to be throwing the ball a lot. Ellison's going to get the bulk load of carries. Ellison's the cash game play. TJ Hammonds, more of a GPP pay down option if you want to go there. Then for the wide receivers, Josh Gordon's just a GPP option. He only had the 2 targets in week 2. He's $10,400 at this point in time, so he's a little overpriced in general. When we get down to Blake Jackson, he is a GPP kind of high floor guy. He's $7,100, which, probably right in line with what his price tag should be at this point in time. Ja'Cour Pearson, cash game play at $9,000. He's seen massive target share both weeks. He's looked really good both weeks. So, and appears to be that kind of favorite option of Ben DiNucci and really benefiting in this offense overall. Jalen Red was put on IR, so we're not, or the reserve list, so we're not too worried about him. Jordan VC, GP pay down option. You could say the same thing about Damon Willis if you want to go there, since both are flat minimum. Charlie Tamoapo is just the tight end. Doesn't really play a lot, so we're not too interested in him. With Seattle, you could play the defense this week in GPPs. They are going against Vegas. Not sure what the quarterback situation is going to be this week. Probably going to be Brett Hundley, but we'll see what this offense looks like against them. So if you really want to go there, you could this week. Moving down to the Battlehawks, we have AJ McCarron, who I believe is the most expensive quarterback on the slate at $10,600. GPP option, he's just that kind of that safe quarterback, but if he does have a strong game, could look pretty good once again. I will have a little bit of exposure to him. In terms of the running backs, Brian Hill's kind of been limited in practice once again this week. If he plays, he's the GPP option. If he doesn't play, Mateo Durant is also a GPP option. If Hill is out for whatever reason, Durant would look a lot better. I'm not sure he goes into cash game territory, since there is kind of Walker there who they used at least a little bit as well. So don't think he could surpass Morgan Ellison or Davion Smith in cash game terms, but would be a very, very strong GPP option. In terms of the wide receivers, Marcel Aitman is dealing with a hamstring injury. I should probably add that too as well, because him and Hakeem Butler both are. Aitman's appears to be worse, since it doesn't really look like he's going to play this week. Butler, if he plays, he's a GPP option. If he doesn't play, we're going to open up some value here. Darius Shepard's been out on the field and ran a lot of routes. Really hasn't done too much, but if those guys miss, then he's a GPP option. Same thing with Austin Proel. And then if you want to take a shot on any of the other guys, George Campbell, Gary Jennings, or Stephen Mitchell, you could go ahead and do it. Stephen Mitchell probably would be my favorite of that group, though. In terms of the tight ends, not really interested in any of these guys, even if, Butler and Aitman are both out. They might get some targets, but really risky at this point in time. For the Battlehawks defense, they're kind of interesting against DC. DC, Jordan Ta'amu can get some turnovers. DC is very run heavy, so they shouldn't be giving up a ton of points just in general, though. Then we move down to the Vegas Vipers, which will be the last team that we're kind of focusing on here. Brett Hundley, $7,400. I haven't been listed as a GPP option. I have not seen anything for their depth chart at this point in time. If he is listed the starter and not like an or a co-starter or anything else like that, he is a cash game option as well due to some of his rushing upside. In terms of the running backs, not really interested in any of these guys at this point in time. Rod Smith's a little bit banged up, but he is expected to play. John Lovett was a little bit more involved in the passing game in week 2. DeAndre Torrey got the touchdown, but wasn't super involved. When we get down to the wide receivers, not really sure who Brett Hundley would favor if he's the quarterback this week. So all these guys are kind of GPP options. If you want to play Sexton or Sweeting, you could throw them in that bucket as well. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of, kind of GPP plays, pay down options, cash game plays, everything else like that. No, there's not a lot of people listening at this point in time, but if you're watching right now as I'm doing it live or have any questions, post and watching on replay, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/CoachCraigSports. And going to get off this sheet for now. We'll get moved over to DraftKings, and I'm going to build a cash game lineup, or what I assume is going to be a cash game lineup. There is a couple different ways that this could go this week, honestly. So let me just get into just a generic contest so we have something to base all this off of. Well, This is actually the big contest, but not entering this lineup specifically in the big contest. It's just more for showing cash game at this point in time. So when it comes to cash this week, I think the most popular options are going to be Kyle Slaughter and Brett Hundley, assuming Brett Hundley is listed as the starter. So in this one, I think we're just going to put Kyle Slaughter in there. We'll build one with him. We'll build one with Huntley. I think you could also use Brandon Silvers. I think you could also use Ben DiNucci. Cash game is going to be very interesting this week overall. I think running back's going to either be Morgan Ellison or Davion Smith. If you're playing Slaughter, maybe you don't play Smith, but definitely could play both together. Since we're playing Slaughter, probably want to put his tight end and Sal Canal in here as well. You could put him in. You could put Tyler Vaughn in as well. But Canal seems like the safer option since he's been very involved in this offense and he has that built-in connection right away. Now, going down as we're talking through it, I think we're going to play. Let me put the Renegades defense in there as well, and then kind of go from there because I think this is kind of where we're going to start, at least in cash game. Jacour Pearson's another one that's probably going to be a lock for cash as well this week since he's just had those 2 strong weeks. So if you do Kyle Slaughter at quarterback, Morgan Eslin at running back, Sal Canal, and Jacour Pearson as your wide receivers / tight end, Renegades defense, then you have $9,200 left over. So you can pretty much pay for anybody at that point in time as well. So really just up to you where you want to go with that, honestly. Kirkland seems like a pretty safe cash game play at this point in time as well. I like the matchup against San Antonio too. Just I don't think they have the greatest defensive backfield as well. If you wanted to put like a Max Borgi here, you could do it. Otherwise, we just go down to like a Davion Smith at $6,500. This one game way that you could build your cash lineup at this point in time with Kyle Slaughter. Let's go over to Brett Hundley, who's a little bit more expensive, but still relatively cheap. So if we play him, let's just say we're going to play Davion Smith in this one. I don't know if you have to play Morgan Nelson. Playing Brett Hundley gets a little bit interesting too. I think in a cash game lineup, you're probably going to run him naked. I think in GPP, you could still run him naked as well, but you more inclined to play one of his wide receivers alongside him. I don't think there's a strong cash game wide receiver personally out of his group. I'll play Jacour Pearson here. Still might play Sal Canella as well, honestly. Then we get down to like, what else do we want to play here? I think we're still playing the Renegades defense in cash. If you want to play the Roughnecks defense, you could do that as well. And then at this point in time, we have $7,600 left over. So let's just say we play Kirkland once again at $7,700. We have $7,500 left over. So we do have quite a few options in cash here. Whether you want to play Black Jackson, who has that high floor, whether you want to play, moving down to like Morgan Ellison and maybe Mateo Durant, if like Brian Hill's listed is out. Definitely a couple different options there, but that's just a couple different cash game lineups that we could build. Going through, going to build like kind of a couple GPP lineups just here as we go. First of all, I think if you're playing Slaughter, you want to do something to get different with him. So if you are playing him, maybe you play him with a Lawan Winningham. Maybe you play Lawan Winningham and Tyler Vaughn and then kind of punt Sal Canal. That is one different strategy you can do if you're playing with Kyle Slaughter this week. Let's just build that out and see what it would look like personally. So we're going to do Kyle Slaughter here. We are going to do Tyler Vaughn's. We are going to do Winningham. And maybe if Slaughter hits this week, this is really what you have to do with a double stack. Not saying that you have to do it. I think it's interesting what we want to do with running back here. Probably not going to play Davion Smith if we're going more with the passing attack here, but he still could very much get there. They could go a lot through the air. Maybe he steals a touchdown there. Let's see. Maybe we play Morgan Ellison in this line. And then we have a ton of options still once again. So I think we're going to play the Roughnecks defense in this one, GPP a little bit more there. I think you can still play like a Jacour Pearson. And then you still have $1,800 or $18,400 remaining. So there's a lot of room to go there if you want to play like a Max Borgi, if you want to play any wide receiver you want to play as well. So that's one way to go about it. If you want to play Borgi and running back, you could definitely do that as well. And then kind of make your eye up a little bit different from there. Let's see. like I said, I'll have a little bit of AJ McCarron, probably put him with Austin Proel the most. Ben DiNucci, I'm going to have a decent amount of, probably once again. We'll have a lot of Ja'Cory Pearson, have a little bit of Blake Jackson. I'll probably be under the field on Blake Jackson once again. Probably get a little bit different in his price range. And then I'll have a little bit of Josh Gordon, just kind of contrarian play this week at $10,400. You can definitely afford it. And then probably a little bit of Jordan VC once again. He did get there with a touchdown last week. Brandon Silvers, most likely to start stacking with Kirkland, but we'll get some Burnett once again. Not building as much lineups, but just talking a little bit of thought process here, just in general. Jordan Ta'amu, I'll probably have 0 of this week if I'm being honest. I'm doing a lot of 20 maxes probably once again this week. Luis Perez, probably not going to start. Jack Cohen, I'll probably have 1 or 2 shares. I will put him with some Darius Roberson. I'll probably put him with Deion Yelder too. I like as a tight end, honestly. I think he's kind of underrated and probably going to get underowned once again. And then maybe a little bit of TJ Vasher here and there if Tolliver misses once again. Paxton Lynch really not getting there this week, but if you want to play Paxton Lynch and like Cody Lattimore together, you could do that. If you want to put Paxton Lynch and Lance Lenoir, if you want to get really, really different in GPP, go ahead and do that combination because I guarantee there's not going to be too many people stacking that. But it could also not work out whatsoever. But if Paxton Lynch goes out and plays the whole game and Lance Lenoir actually goes out and plays like 60+% of snaps and sees 5 targets and catches 4 of them and has a touchdown, then he might end up being pretty good. And you got to remember, the fact is this guy signed like 2-3 days before their last game, practiced once or twice, and went out there and played 50% of the snaps, and he has built-in chemistry with Paxton Lynch as well. So that is something to consider there. Obviously, if you want to play him and Lattimore and Paxton Lynch together, you could do it. Not recommending that personally myself. That might be getting a little bit too crazy. Brett Hundley, I like a lot at $7,400. My second most optimal lineup, at least early on when I was doing it. Had him running naked, actually. So there is no stack alongside him, but I like him and Jeff Badet a little bit together. I like him and probably Geronimo Allison together. Even though I'm not a big Geronimo Allison guy or believer at this point in time, but he does have that built-in chemistry with Brett Hundley to start off. Let's see. De'Aaron King, I'll throw a couple shares in. You know, he's $7,000, so he's relatively cheap. I don't think you need to stack him with anyone at this point in time. If you want to do the same theory with Cole McDonald, you could definitely do it. And then moving down to back to Kyle Slaughter. So Slaughter, I'll probably get the most with Tyler Vaughns, with Winningham. I'll still get some Sal Cannello, but I think most of my Sal Cannello shares this week will be not stacked alongside Kyle Slaughter, because I think that's a way to get different. Play a better quarterback than Kyle Slaughter. Play Sal Cannella in your lineup stuff. That's going to be his main target. And then just roll with Cannella, roll with that better quarterback, because I do have 4 quarterbacks that are projected higher than Kyle Slaughter, assuming he starts 100% of the snaps this week too. So I don't think there's the need to play him. I'd rather play a Brett Hundley. I'd rather play a Brandon Silvers. I'd rather play Ben DiNucci. And I do have AJ McCarron ranked ahead of him as well, just by a couple points, or like by 0.3 points, assuming everybody in that list does play 100% of snaps, or in Silver's case, the majority of the snaps, because Cole McDonald's still going to get in there a little bit and run around a little bit as well. But that's pretty much what I do have in terms of XFL DFS week 3. If anybody does have any specific questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Do appreciate the few people that did tune in tonight to listen live. If you're watching on replay, also do appreciate you checking the video out as well. Once again, before I get out of here, if you use promo code COACH over at runthesims.com, you'll save 10%. Helps them out a little bit, helps me out a little bit, and will definitely help you out some as well. If you're somebody that likes looking at target shares, snap rates, percentage of carries, percentage of pass attempts, and everything else like that, like I do, and I have a whole sheet put together over on my Patreon as well. Definitely going to be a site for you, because you can use the DOI if you just want to go out based off their projections, use their regular optimizer, just adjust the randomness to it, set some limits, set some groups, set some stacks. You can definitely do that as well. Very useful tool. And promo code COACH over there once again. But that's pretty much what I do have in terms of this stream. Hopefully you guys all have a lot of success in week 3. And as I mentioned before, if you do have any more questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, be sure to, Also, if you're someone that's brand new, just seeing this video for the first time, coming upon my channel for the first time, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we have XFL DFS going on, some NBA DFS, some NBA prize picks, some XFL prize picks. Those typically go up on my Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. I will be looking through XFL probably a little bit later after the stream, see if there's anything I like there on Prize Picks. I'll post that up if there is anything that really stands out to me for this week over on my Twitter. So definitely be sure to check that out as well. I'll try to get the inactives listed in the comments too of this video so that you guys are aware of them, because they come out about like an hour to 45 minutes before game time as well. And that can impact the DFS slate quite a bit, especially with some of the injuries that are going on out there this week as well. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video, for today's stream. Definitely appreciate everybody that did tune in to check it out, everybody that is watching live or after the fact on replay as well. And I do hope that each and every one of you has a great rest of your day, great rest of your night, since it is nighttime at this point in time. But do appreciate everybody that did take the time out of their day to watch this video, watch this live stream once again.